In the opening scenes, we see a man in a white terry bathrobe and house slippers confidently walking along a large road. Reaching his destination, the Emmaus shelter, he called out to a woman named Monique, his sister. The man's name is Jacques Porat. While Monique was dealing with issues concerning the shelter, which houses and employs a large number of people, Jacques quietly waited for her in the corner. When the woman finished with her work matters, Jacques had already managed to blend into the crowd and snag some breakfast that wasn't meant for him. He asked Monique for a temporary stay at the shelter. Monique didn't refuse, but in return for his accommodation, she demanded that her brother work like everyone else. Jacques had a grand idea in his mind about not just becoming rich but becoming incredibly wealthy. However, Monique, full of skepticism, one day while sitting in line, Jacques read an article about how all multi-billionaires started out in a garage. He decided to do the same. Sitting in a garage, he began developing a business idea. Jacques pondered this until his friend kicked him out of the garage and demanded rent payment. However, Monique didn't take her brother's musings seriously. After listening to his idea, she only asked where he had disappeared to 3 years ago and why he hadn't answered her calls. This wasn't Jacques' first attempt to get rich. When their parents were alive, he tried to persuade them to transfer 5,000 euros to the account of an energy company in Chechnya called Money and Wind. They were only saved from the transfer by the father's poor memory and the fiery tempers of both men. Monique explained to Jacques how things worked at the Emmaus shelter. People arrive, and no questions are asked about where they came from or what they used to do. Monique didn't let her brother finish his stream of thoughts and handed him over for training to a carpenter named Manu, who reproached Jacques for not helping his sister when she lost her job, home, car and husband. Manu also asked about Jacques' bathrobe, to which Jacques, omitting the details of its theft, replied that the bathrobe was from a spa. At dinner, Jacques tells Monique that he and Manu worked well together. The sister praises him for his progress, but Jacques feels that carpentry is not for him since there are no carpenters on the Forbes lists. Jacques told Monique about his life, of course leaving out certain details. He blamed the father for kicking him out of the house at 20, which forced him to work wherever he could, even taking care of elderly people. Jacques omitted the fact that he actually dated elderly people for money. Monique remarked that taking care of the elderly is very noble and immediately lamented that Jacques didn't care for his own parents at all. Jacques countered that he was just trying to survive by working hard on the railroad. Monique doesn't know that in reality Jacques was just a simple beggar, and she admired his profession. Jacques responded that it was too petty for him, to which the sister discreetly wished him good night. Jacques said that he hasn't slept for the past 3 years. Instead, like a nocturnal animal, he hunts for great ideas in the twilight. Monique asked what this brilliant plan was. Jacques enthusiastically replied, to turn ordinary people into beautiful ones. It all started back when Jacques was supposedly working on the railroad. Jacques met Poutrain, a former classmate. In school, Poutrain was second to last in the ranking of good-looking guys, for which he was constantly teased, but at some point he got fed up. In the end the guy got a gastric band, then new teeth, new hair, liposuction and a facelift. Thanks to this transformation, he easily found a job, quickly moved up the career ladder and now has his own company leading in its segment and a beautiful wife. Then Jacques visited Poutrain. He showed him his magnificent house and told him that all the surgeries he had undergone cost only a couple of thousand euros. The secret was a super budget clinic in Bulgaria. That's when Jacques came up with his brilliant idea, plastic surgery for the poor. Monique was skeptical of Jacques' idea. He replied that Monique, like their parents, wrongly didn't believe in capitalism, since it's not Karl Marx who will install a jacuzzi for him. The next day, Jacques enthusiastically began asking the shelter residents about their previous jobs and handed out his business cards, offering aesthetic and cultural services. Jacques was an hour late to his workplace in the carpentry shop, which displeased Manu. But Jacques managed to persuade the man to go have coffee before starting the workday. Jacques continued his inquiries about the past occupations of the shelter residents, and Manu revealed that he once had a travel agency, and before that a video club, but with the advent and development of the internet, his business went downhill. So 8 years ago Manu ended up in the shelter. Jacques tried to convince Manu that he needed to start moving and get out of his comfort zone. The next day, Jacques tried to convince another resident, which almost resulted in a broken finger. Jacques went to the local library and tried to convince the librarian, Vincent, that nowadays appearance is far more important than achievements, as exemplified by Gandhi. When mentioning Gandhi's name, the first thing that comes to mind is his shirt, not his achievements. Monique scolded Jacques for shirking his work in the carpentry shop. Jacques countered that he had a severe allergy to sawdust. Monique gently reminded him that he could try various professions at their shelter, and no one would mind. Jacques announced that Monique didn't need to cook anything for dinner tonight because he was taking her to a restaurant. In the parking lot, Jacques found out that Monique, with the help of the shelter residents, had repaired their family car, the only thing Monique had left from the parents. In the glove compartment, he was surprised to find their father's ashes. Monique explained that it was his last wish. Monique couldn't hold back her tears and began to cry, asking Jacques why he hadn't come to the funeral. Jacques began blaming their parents again for kicking him out of the house during the height of his midlife crisis. The restaurant Jacques invited Monique to turned out to be a fast food place. Jacques asked Monique what dreams she harbored in her mind. Maybe she dreamed of a new pair of shoes every day or not having to collect coupons for groceries. Monique replied that a beautiful appearance couldn't provide any of that. Asking for a marker at a roadside diner, Jacques pointed out the areas on Monique's face that needed correction to help her believe in herself again. And Monique agreed. Today Jacques' aesthetic correction company officially began its existence. The next morning, Jacques decided to make more business cards. A small mistake, and instead of 100 business cards, Jacques received 10,000. This led to the depletion of all of Jacques' startup capital. However, Jacques was not easily frightened. He was confident that success was inevitable. He had sold the wheels off his car a week ago, and now it was time for the bumper and rearview mirrors. More and more people began listening to Jacques' words about how small changes in appearance could help fulfill their dreams. Jacques visited Monique to tell her that he felt a change within himself. Monique admitted that when Jacques first came to the shelter, she had to tell everyone about him. He was so out of place in their community that they even wanted to expel him. Monique gave her brother a photograph of Abbé Pierre, the founder of their shelter. On the photo, it was written that reasons to live are as necessary as means. Jacques put the photo away in his wallet and pasted his own photo into a list of the most successful businessmen. In his attempts to charm the next resident Corinne, Jacques failed to consider the delicate emotional state of the local artist, which provoked his sister's anger. Monique said that so far, everyone had managed to get along together in the shelter, and money hadn't bothered anyone. It was good here, and Monique begged her brother not to ruin it. The next day, Monique took Jacques to a doctor. Not just any doctor, but the pediatrician who treated them in childhood. At the appointment, the doctor recognized Jacques but still saw him as the same hyperactive child he was back then. However, instead of helping Jacques, the doctor himself became his patient. Jacques tried to convince Monique that the doctor had diagnosed her in absentia with bipolar disorder and that she needed medication. Jacques had to return to his unfortunate car and remove a few more parts from it. In between, he shared the story of his future success with a local beggar, who agreed to guard Jacques' car for a few coins. At night, Jacques read about Bill Gates' success story, highlighting all the interesting and important parts with a marker. Eventually every line of the book was highlighted. Monique started taking medication for bipolar disorder. Jacques decided that the recommended dosage should be doubled for faster results. Jacques was visited by the same resident who had almost broken his finger for excessive chattiness. The man once dreamed of becoming a footballer, and Jacques' words reignited his hope that plastic surgery could give him another chance. Jacques gathered all those who agreed to his services in one place. He talked about his program. His company wasn't just about plastic surgery, it was a package of services that included self-confidence, cultural activities and omega-3 supplements. Jacques handed out medical questionnaires and business proposals to show that the venture was conducted with a serious and reliable clinic. He showed an oversized shorts, claiming that he used to be very overweight, with rotten teeth, protruding ears and sagging skin, but the doctors at this clinic worked a miracle. Jacques listed all the plastic surgery services the attendees wanted, calculated the cost and came up with a total of 12,000 euros. He gave everyone 2 days to find the money. At night, Monique took the parents' ashes out of the car, crying and asking for their forgiveness for her actions. She believed she had a mission to help Jacques. Jacques coordinated all the necessary details with the doctors in Bulgaria, while the people who approached Jacques were already imagining their dreams coming true. Everyone was excited except Monique. The medication made her feel out of sorts. Instead of a plane, Jacques transported his clients in a truck. Along the way, he tried to bolster their self-confidence. After the truck journey to Romania, the clients of his firm transferred to a limousine assembled from several different cars. The driver named Miha explained that the limousine was being prepared for a wedding in Bucharest, and it was precisely because of the car's appearance that the price of the trip was so low. The passengers were afraid to even move. As part of the cultural program, Jacques took the group of his charges to Buzludza. He told them about the history of this semi-ruined building. In his story, he criticized communism so vehemently that Monique couldn't stand it and ran out of the building. She accused Jacques of insulting their father's memory and values with his words. Monique believed that capitalism would lead all the inhabitants of the planet to ruin. The Bulgarian clinic looked truly marvelous. While Monique was undergoing rhinoplasty, Jacques tried to negotiate a partnership with the clinic representatives. But the conversation was interrupted by a ringing phone. His clients decided to reveal the truth. They called Jacques over and said that they didn't really need body changes. They loved themselves just the way they were. Jacques couldn't believe what he heard. It turned out that from the very beginning, all his clients had just pretended to believe in the necessity of the plastic interventions Jacques talked so much about. They did all this for Monique, who was on the verge of depression just like many years ago. It turned out that the money Jacques received wasn't from them but from Monique. To get it, she sold the parents' car, the only thing she had left from them. Jacques was beside himself. He stormed out of the clinic and stole the limousine, concluding that he couldn't change the world with this bunch of losers. He berated himself for what he had done. Stopping by the roadside, Jacques took money from Monique's bag. With it, he wanted to start over. But his eyes caught sight of the bags containing his parents' ashes, which Monique had kept in her bag. Jacques took the ashes and scattered them over the greatest monument to communism, Buzludza. This was the place where his parents would have wanted to be. Suddenly Jacques realized that Monique was left all alone. He decided to return to his beloved sister and tried to turn the limousine around. Jacques was in such a hurry that he had an accident. He was taken to the nearest medical facility, the same plastic surgery clinic he had just escaped from. One of the clients, who could speak Russian, asked the doctor to do everything possible to make sure Jacques was okay. But to reconstruct Jacques' face, the doctor needed a photo of him. Someone handed the doctor Jacques' wallet, hoping to find a picture of the owner inside. A year later, a man in a white bathrobe and slippers confidently walked along the large road. This man was heading to the Emmaus shelter, where he wanted to find a guy named Click Clack. But none of the residents knew such a person. However, when the stranger mentioned the name Jacques, he was told to go to the office and ask Monique. When the man went inside, he saw Monique with a refreshed and younger-looking face. The man turned out to be one of those whom Jacques had persuaded to use his services last year. A year had passed, and the man had saved up money and decided to make changes. When he saw Jacques, he couldn't recognize him. Instead of 50-year-old Jacques, the man saw Abbé Pierre himself. But it was Jacques. When the plastic surgeon had asked for a photo sample, he was handed Jacques' wallet, but no one had bothered to check who was in the picture. The man in the white robe tried to persuade Jacques to open his plastic surgery firm for at least one day, even offering money up front, but Jacques was steadfast. He had given it up. Once, Jacques had tried to sell the beauty of all these people, but it was always there, in each of them. Now he simply offered the guest to keep his money and join their shelter. Jacques had changed not only externally but also internally. He had wanted to be a billionaire, the next Bill Gates, but he became Abbé Pierre. Jacques and the other residents of the shelter collected the remnants of the old, repaired it and transformed it into a new world. Monique's mission was complete. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.